I'm Dr. M. Jasmine, working as an associate professor in the Department of ECE, Bharat Institute of Higher Education and Research. I'm going to discuss about some of the important topics in the course microcontrollers. The first topic, what we are going to see is Introduction to Microcontroller. So in this, we'll see what is a microcontroller and microcontroller types based on bus width, memory devices, based on instruction set and memory architecture. Then we'll discuss about RISC and CISC architecture, Harvard and von Neumann architecture. Then we'll move on to the difference between microprocessor and microcontroller. Then we have to see in detail about 8051 microcontroller, starting from the features of microcontroller. After that, we have to discuss about the pin diagram of 8051, then in detail about the architecture of 8051. After that, the special function registers and memory organization of 8051. What is a microcontroller? A microcontroller is defined as a small computer that is capable of performing specific tasks. For example, washing machine, oven, automobiles. In automobile, we have airbag system to avoid crashes. So, in that airbag system, we have the microcontroller unit placed in it. As this microcontroller is acting like the brain of an embedded system, it's also referred as embedded controller. Then coming to the categories of microcontroller, based on bus width, we categorize it into 8-bit, 16-bit, 32-bit, etc. And based on memory devices, it is categorized as embedded microcontroller and external microcontroller. And on instruction set as complex instruction set computer and reduced instruction set computer. Then based on memory architecture, we have Harvard architecture and von Neumann architecture. The first category based on bus width, 8-bit microcontroller. So in 8-bit microcontroller, the internal data bus is of 8-bit wide. So based on this, the range of address varies from 00 to FF. And example, I can say Intel 8031 or 8051 and PIC1X families, and in Motorola MC68HC11 families. Then about 16-bit microcontroller, the data bus is of 16-bit wide and the address ranges from 0000 to FFFF. And example for this is your PIC2X families, extended 8051, Intel 8096 and Motorola MC68HC112 families. Next, based on the memory devices, first we have embedded microcontroller. So in this, the different functional units, we mean by the functional units such as program memory, data memory, the ports, input and output ports, and the counters, timers. Then for communication, we have the serial communication block, and for providing interrupts, we have the interrupt. All these things are embedded in a single chip. So that type of microcontroller is called as embedded microcontroller. Whereas in external microcontroller, it doesn't have all the functional blocks available in a single chip. Here it doesn't have a program memory, so it is called as an external memory microcontroller. Then based on instruction set, we have complex instruction set computer and reduced instruction set computer. So in complex instruction set computer, the programmer is allowed to use only one instruction in place of many instructions. Whereas in reduced instruction set computer, the main purpose is that we have to reduce the design time for the microprocessor or controller. So for that, we have this reduced instruction set computer. And in this one, the instructions are allowed to operate on any register, or they can use any of the addressing modes, and it also they can at a time can access a program as well as the data. So moving on to the RISC architecture. In the block diagram here we can see we have main memory and instruction cache and data cache, and the control unit is going to be the hardwired control unit. Here this architecture will have a set of customized instructions. So the main purpose of this architecture to we have to minimize or reduce the instruction execution time. So how that is possible means we have to reduce the number of instructions. That is, for each instruction cycle we require only one clock cycle. For example, I can say when for addition, what we have to do first, we have to load the data, then we'll perform the addition operation, and then after that we'll store the data. So here the machine each cycle will have three parameters. First thing is that it has to fetch the instruction, then after that it has to decode the instruction, then only it will execute the corresponding operation. So mainly this RISC processor is used to perform various complex instructions. How it can do that means by combining them into a simpler ones. So under RISC processor we have Sun, Spark, PowerPC and Microchip PIC processors. Then we'll move on to the CISC architecture. So when we analyze this block diagram, here we have a main memory and a cache memory, and then we have the same block for instructions as well as for data. Then the control unit is microprogram control unit. So what is the need to go for CISC architecture means? The main thing is that it will decrease the memory cost. Why? Because here we doesn't require large instructions or large programs. So for doing addition, we have to give only the instruction as add. That will load the data, then it will do the operation, and then it will store the output. So here CISC architecture, we are going to reduce the program code by means of adapting a concept that we have to embed multiple operations on a program instruction. So we need large memory space to store the data, by means of which we are increasing the memory requirement. And this architecture is quite expensive compared to the RISC architecture. Then now we'll summarize the difference between the RISC and the CISC architecture. So RISC stands for Reduced Instruction Set and CISC Complex Instruction Set. So here it is a hardwired unit of programming in the RISC processor, whereas in CISC it's going to be the microprogramming unit. Then regarding the execution time, it's going to be short in RISC compared to the CISC. Then regarding the instruction format, fixed format is allowed in RISC architecture, whereas a variable format is allowed in CISC. Then the main application, RISC architecture is used in high-end applications. High-end applications in the sense image processing, video processing, and in telecommunication system and all, we go for this RISC architecture. Whereas CISC, it is used in low-end applications, just like for providing security, home automation or home security systems and all, we'll go for the CISC architecture. RISC occupies more space in memory, whereas CISC occupies less space in memory. So example of this RISC architecture is ARM microcontroller, AVR and Spark. For CISC, your Motorola 680000 family and VAX. So next thing is that von Neumann architecture and Harvard architecture. So first we'll see into von Neumann architecture. Here the main thing is that the memory, we have the program as well as instructions, program data and instructions stored in the same memory. So the bus will be common for both instructions as well as for the program data. And we have the CPU which will contain the ALU, operation registers, program counter and control unit. and for storing the input and output, we have the input output system. Then Harvard architecture. So in Harvard architecture, the thing is that we have separate storage for the instructions as well as the data. So we have separate buses for instructions, for accessing instructions and for accessing data. That is, when we are fetching the instructions, at the same time, if you want to do some operations on the data, it is possible. So using Harvard architecture, the pipelining concept and all is possible. So that will increase the speed of the processor or controller. And we have this CPU, in which we'll have the registers, program counter, ALU and control unit. The remaining part and all is going to be same in Harvard and von Neumann. The difference lies in the memory system. So now we'll summarize the difference between von Neumann architecture and Harvard architecture. So von Neumann is going to be then an ancient computer architecture based on stored program computer concept, whereas Harvard architecture is a modern computer architecture based on Harvard Mark relay based model. In von Neumann, we are using the same memory for accessing both instructions and data, but in Harvard we have separate memory for instructions and data. So as same memory is used, there is no the common bus is allotted for data and instruction transfer in von Neumann architecture, whereas we have separate buses for transferring data and instruction in Harvard architecture. For executing single instruction, 2 clock cycles are required for von Neumann architecture, whereas in Harvard we require only 1 cycle. Regarding cost, von Neumann is cheaper in cost, whereas Harvard is costlier. So as we don't have the separate space for program and instruction, here the simultaneous access of instructions and data is not possible in von Neumann, whereas that is possible in your Harvard architecture. So this type of architecture, that is von Neumann, is used in personal computers and small computers. Harvard architecture is used in microcontrollers and signal processing applications. So now, before moving into 8051 microcontroller, first we'll analyze the difference between microcontroller and microprocessor. Then we'll move on to the 8051 pin diagram and architecture. So basically, microprocessor is the CPU is just acting like the CPU of a computer. So other peripherals, the peripherals I mean the input output devices, the memory, everything we have to interface to that externally. Whereas in microcontroller, all these units, functional units, are embedded in a single chip. So that is the basic difference between the microprocessor and microcontroller. So microcontrollers are used to execute a single task within an application, whereas microprocessors are used for big applications. Microcontrollers designing and hardware cost is low, whereas for microprocessor its designing and hardware cost is high. Easy to replace a microcontroller, not so easy to replace a microprocessor. So microcontroller, it's been built with CMOS technology, so it requires less power to operate. Whereas in microprocessor, it has to control the entire system, so the power consumption is going to be high. Microcontroller consists of CPU, RAM, ROM, input output ports, and analog to digital converters, everything. Whereas microprocessor doesn't consist all these things, that is RAM, ROM, input output ports and all these things has to be interfaced externally to the microprocessor. So now the features of 8051. So 8051 is basically an 8-bit microcontroller. So it has 8-bit bidirectional data bus and 16-bit address bus. And regarding the memory, it has 4 kilobytes of on-chip program memory, that is ROM, and 128 bytes on-chip data memory, that is RAM, and it has 4 register banks. Then regarding the registers, it has 32 general purpose registers. Then each register can store an 8-bit data. Then it has 2 timers, 2 16-bit timers, and for providing the interrupts, it has 3 internal and 2 external interrupts. And input output port, it has 4 input output ports. All these ports are acting as an 8-bit ports. Then it has 16-bit program counter and data pointer. And apart from that, it also has special features such as UART, Universal Asynchronous Receiver Transmitter, Analog to Digital Converter, op-amp, etc. Now, so this is the pin diagram of 8051 microcontroller. So 8051 is an 40-pin IC. We have just now discussed that 8051 has 4 input output ports. So each port is of an 8-bit. So 32 pins. So among these 40 pins, 32 pins are allotted for 4 ports. Port 0, port 1, port 2, port 3. So regarding the specification, if we have P1.0, it means that the 0th pin of port 1. P1.2 means the second pin of port 1. Then, so 32 is over, so remaining 8 pins. In that remaining 8 pins, 2 pins are allotted for ground and VCC, and 2 pins, here we can see XTAL1 and XTAL2, which will be connected to the crystal oscillator to provide the frequency to the microcontroller. Then we have reset pin, and after that we have here, when we are interfacing some external memory, for that we have external access pin, address latch enabler program slash pin, and program store enable. So if in the pins, when we see the when we refer like 30th pin is referred as at ALE slash program bar. So whenever a bar is placed over a signal, it means that it acts as an active low signal. If a bar is not placed over a particular signal, then it is acting like an active high signal. So we'll discuss about these pins in detail. So first we'll see the pins 1 to 9. In that 1 to 8 are the port 1 pins of 8051. So port 1 it's an dedicated 8-bit bidirectional input output port. Why I say it is a dedicated means, here it is not allotted with any other functions. So it is purely acting as an bidirectional input output port and with the internal pull-up resistors. That is, if you want to make the signal as high or low, that is possible. Then pin 9 is the reset pin to reset the microprocessor. So when that is possible means, whenever the reset pin is high for a minimum of 2 machine cycles, the microcontroller will be reset. But during that time also, the oscillator will be running to provide the necessary frequency for the microcontroller. So next is pins 10 to 17. So that is related to port 3. So pin 10 to 17 forms the port 3 pins. So port 3 is again acting as a bidirectional input output port along with the internal pull-up resistors. And apart from the input output function, this port also has some special functions. So what are these special functions means? Like these pins will be used for serial communication, for interrupts, for timers, and for external memory access. So pin number P3.0, that is 0th pin of port 3, it is, and first pin of port 3 will be acting like an serial input and serial output in serial communication, and 3.2 and 3.3 will be used for providing external interrupt 0 and external interrupt 1. Then 3.4 and 3.5 will be used for timers, timer 0 and timer 1, and 3.6 and 3.7 is used for external memory write and external memory read. Next, pins 18 to 20, here 18 and 19 will be connected to the oscillator. So, to provide the frequency. Then pin 20 is the ground pin. So, ground we know it represents 0 voltage. Next, pins 21 and 21 to 28 are allotted to the port 2 of 8051 microcontroller. So, here it will act like a bidirectional port, and apart from that, this one also will act like a higher order address byte. So, when we are interfacing some external memory, these pins, the port 2 pins will act like a higher order address byte. These pins also have internal pull-ups. Next, pins 29 to 31. So, it has some dedicated functions. So, 29 PSEN stands for Program Store Enable. So, this is used when we are accessing external memory. To access external program memory, we will be using this Program Store Enable. Then address pin 13, we have two functions. One is your address latch enable, another one is your program. The first one, address latch enable. Actually, in my 8051 microcontroller, we have 8-bit data bus and 16-bit address bus. The lower order address bus will be multiplexed with the data. So, we will say it as AD0 to AD7, and then the higher order bus will be separate. So, in order to separate, demultiplex the address and data separately, we have this address latch enable signal. Then the program, this one is used during your flash programming. So, this particular pin's purpose is that to provide the program pulse input during your flash programming. And pin 31 also we have two functions. One is your external access and VPP. That is, whenever the signal is high, it will act like an VPP signal, and when the signal is low, it will act like an EA, external access signal. The same way here in pin 30 also, address latch enable is going to be an high signal and program is going to be a low signal. So, external access will be used when we are interfacing external memory, and VPP is that to provide the programming voltage, that is 12 volt programming voltage. In that case, VPP will be used. Next, pin 32 to 40. In that, 32 to 39 are used as port 0 pins, and these also act like a bidirectional input output pins, but here we doesn't have the internal pull-ups. In addition to this input output port, this one also act as a lower order address and data bus. Then pin 40, which is used to provide the power supply, that is 5 volt, which is required for the operation of the microcontroller. So, this is about the pin diagram of 8051. So, next we will move on to the architecture of 8051 or the block diagram of 8051. So, just now we have seen in 8051 we have 4 ports. So, based on that, we can see here 4 ports, that is port 0, port 1, port 2, port 3, port 0 drivers along with the port 0 latch. Similarly, port 1 driver along with port 1 latch, port 2 driver along with port 2 latch, and port 3 driver and port 3 latch. Then we have the arithmetic and logic unit. So, the main function of the arithmetic and logic unit is to perform the arithmetic and logic operations. So, for that it needs data. The data will be stored in these registers So here temporary 1, temporary 2, these are called as the temporary registers, and accumulator also act like an A register. And then we have this B register. So from the registers, the data will be given to this ALU and the operations will be performed. So the result of the operations will be reflected in this PSW, which stands for program status word. And the next thing is that we have the memory, RAM memory and ROM memory. We have the address location stored in the RAM address register. Then for program memory, the address will be stored in the program address register. Then to keep track of the program, we have this program counter and the program counter incrementer to increment the address location of the program. Then this DPTR is again going to be the data pointer register. Then from your ALU, memory and input output, the next block is your timing and control unit block. In this you have this, when we want to have an external access, we'll be using this program store enable program or EA/VPP. So the architecture, how it is designed means, first the memory part, arithmetic and logic unit block, timing and control unit block, and the ports, input output ports. So we'll see in detail about these blocks. The first one is the oscillator and clock generator. So in microcontroller, all the operations will be synchronized only with the help of clock pulses. For that, we have this oscillator clock. The main function of this oscillator clock is to generate the clock pulses, by means of which we are going to synchronize all the internal operations. So how to generate the clock pulses? We need a resonant network. So that resonant network will be connected through the pins XTL1 and XTL2. That will form up an oscillator. So the minimum and maximum frequencies at which the oscillator will run is 1 megahertz to 16 megahertz. So next is the arithmetic and logic unit. So the main purpose of it is to perform the arithmetic operations and logical operations. Arithmetic operation, the sense addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and logic, your AND logic, OR logic, etc. And to perform this logical and arithmetic operations, the data we need, so the data will be stored in the registers. So regarding the registers, we have 34 general purpose registers. So these general purpose registers are also called as working registers, and we have two math registers. So they are A and B, and 32 are the bank of registers, 4 register banks. First thing, A register, that is your accumulator register. So all registers, this general purpose registers will be of your 8-bit register. This address is E0H and bit and byte accessible. That means the register, we can access it by bit or a group of bit. Access it means we can change it by bit or as a number of bits together. And here the most of the instructions are carried out on the accumulator data. And among these A and B registers, this is going to be the most versatile register. Next is the B register. So this is going to be the 8-bit math register. Again, it is also bit and byte accessible. So as a pair, it will be combinedly used with your A register. Basic thing is that it is used to store the data. Next is the program status word. So program status word, as I told, when we do some operations, result of the operations will be affected in this program status word. This is again going to be a bit and byte accessible. And this program status word, it has 4 conditional flags or math flag and 3 control flags. Right? So each flag, that we can either set it or reset it based on the result of the operation. So we can see now the format of this program status word. So in this is again an 8-bit register. The first bit alone is not used, right? Remaining 7 bits are used. So P stands for parity, and the second bit OV, it stands for overflow, and RS1 and RS0. So these 2 bits are used to select the register bank. So we have 4 register banks in 8051 microcontroller. To select the register banks, we have this RS1 and RS0. Then F0 is your user defined flag. Then we have the auxiliary carry flag and carry flag. The first RS1 and RS0, if it is 0, 0, register bank 0 is selected. If it is 0, 1, register bank 1 is selected. 1, 0 means register bank 2, and 1, 1 means register bank 3 is selected. So we will discuss about these flags. First thing is the carry flag. So when carry will be generated means during your addition or subtraction operation. So whenever after performing addition or subtraction, if carry occurs, this corresponding flag will be set. Otherwise, it will be reset. So generally, it is used in arithmetic, logical, jump operation, rotate, and Boolean operations. Then auxiliary carry. So this auxiliary carry flag will be used only in BCD arithmetic operations. So what do you mean by this auxiliary carry means? Like 4 bits is termed as a nibble. Okay. So if there is a carry from the lower nibble to upper nibble. So in position wise, I can say if there is a carry from your D3 to D4. So D0, D1, D2, D3 is considered as a lower nibble, and D4, D5, D6, D7 is considered as a upper nibble. So when there is a carry from the lower nibble to upper nibble, then this auxiliary carry flag will be set, otherwise it will be reset. Then overflow. So overflow means suppose the register's storage capacity is exceeding its maximum storage, then this overflow flag will be set. It is used in the signed arithmetic operations. Next is the parity. So parity flag, what is the use of this parity flag means? Mainly it is used for checking out the error when during communication and all. If in order to check out whether error occurs or not, we use this parity flag. So in which we'll be counting the number of ones. If the number of ones is going to be even, we say it is going to be an even parity. And if the number of ones is going to be odd, then it's going to be odd parity. For even parity, the flag will be set, and for odd parity, the flag will be reset. Next, control flags. In control flags, we have F0, that is the user defined flag. So the user only defines the function of this flag. So he or she can test or clear this flag through the software by means of programming. Then RS1 and RS0, we have seen, like it is main purpose is to select the register banks. So that's what we have seen, RS1, RS0 to select the register banks right from 0 to 3. And the address range for register bank 0, the address is 00 to 07. For 1, it is going to be 08 to 0F. For 2, it's going to be 10 to 17. And for 3, it is going to be 18 to 1F. So next block in the architecture is going to be the program counter. So the program counter main purpose is to keep track of the program. So here it will tell the 8051 where the next instruction is available in the memory, and also it is used to hold the 16-bit address of internal RAM, external RAM or external ROM. So initially it will be set to 000, and during the execution of the instruction it will be incremented. So when it is incrementing, it is not necessary that it has to be incremented only by 1. And the same case, it can't be decremented. So next is about the data pointer register. So this is going to be a 16-bit register. So DPTR consists of two 8-bit registers, namely data pointer high and data pointer low, DPH and DPL. So the address for this is DPH is 83H and DPL is 82H. It is again an general purpose register. So both your DPH will store an 8-bit and DPL also will store an 8-bit data. It doesn't have an internal address and all. It acts like a base register in base relative addressing mode and in indirect jump. So we will discuss in the next lecture and all about these addressing modes in detail. Okay, so next thing is about the stack pointer. So the stack pointer is going to be an 8-bit register. It is a byte addressable. We can change it as a byte only. So its address is 81H. So main purpose of the stack pointer, that is it will hold the internal RAM memory location addresses. So that will be considered as a stack memory. Next, the data will be stored in the stack or retrieved from the stack by means of two instructions, say push and pop instruction. So when you are pushing the data into the stack, you are adding the data. So the stack pointer will be incremented by 1. Whereas when you are taking the data, when you are retrieving the data, you are popping up the data. That means the stack pointer will be decremented by 1 because we are retrieving the data from the stack. So we are decrementing the stack pointer by 1. Okay, so next about the special function registers. So apart from this general purpose registers, we have special function registers in this 8051 microcontroller. The first thing is your timer and counter registers. So already we have seen 8051 has two timers. Both of them are 16-bit. So we have two registers, that is register T0 and T1. Then normally these registers will be used to hold the count. So the basic purpose of timer is that to introduce delay in the system, and for counter to count the number of events. For that purpose only we have this timer and counter register. So here these registers are byte addressable one. Then we have in timer control registers, we have T-mod, that is timer register. We have T-mod register, timer mode register. So in order to select the different modes of timer, and timer control register. So what is the purpose of the timer mode? That is based on the name itself. It is the one which is used to select the mode and also the control operation of the timer by writing control word. It's again going to be an 8-bit register and address is 89H. And next is the T control register. This is again an 8-bit register. Address is 88H. It is a byte addressable register. Then in this timer control register, in this 8-bit, the 4-bit in the MSB are used to control the operation of the timer or counter, and 4-bit in the LSB are used for external interrupt control. Next, the format and all we will see when we are discussing about the timer and counter topic. So next is the one which is used for your serial communication, that is the serial data register. So we have two serial data register, that is serial buffer and serial control register. So first one is that your serial buffer. Again it is going to be an 8-bit register. Its address is 99H, and the main purpose of this is to hold the data which is to be transferred serially. So next is the serial control register. Again it's going to be an 8-bit register. It's either bit or byte addressable. Address is 98H, and this particular register controls the operation of the serial communication. So the next category of special function register is the interrupt register, which is basically used for interrupt mechanism. In that we have interrupt enable register and interrupt priority register. So interrupt enable, the main purpose is that to enable or disable the interrupt. And interrupt priority means, like if we have many interrupts at a time, we have to resolve the priority. So for that we have this interrupt priority register. So the main purpose of that is to select the low level or high level priority of the individual interrupts. So both these registers are going to be a bit or byte addressable one. So next type of special function register is the power control register. So in the power control register, it's going to be an 8-bit register. It is again a byte addressable. Address is 87H. So the main purpose of the power control register is to control the mode of power saving circuit. That is, we are going to define whether the circuit is going to operate in the idle mode or power down mode, and also it is used to modify the baud rate of serial communication. That is the rate at which the informations are getting transferred. Okay, so to modify that baud rate, we use this power control register. So this is about your special function registers. So next we'll see the memory organization, that is how the RAM and ROM is organized. The first is this is the picture depicting the internal RAM structure. So in that we have 128 bytes. How it is split up means, first we have registers banks 0, 1, 2, 3. For 0, the address is 00 to 07. For 1, it's going to be 08 to 0F, and then 10 to 17, and then 18 to 1F. And next 16 bits, it's going to be the bit addressable area. And after that we have the general purpose area, which address will be ranging from 30 to 7F. So this is the thing, like first thing is that it is allotted for the 4 registers, and then 16 bytes which is allotted for the bit addressable area, and 80 bytes which will be allotted for the general purpose area. Next, the internal ROM. Here we have data memory and program code memory. Both of them will have different physical memory, but both will have the same addresses. So the internal ROM address ranges from 0000 to 0FFF. So the program controller addresses this program code starting from 0000 to 0FFF. So whenever we have this address higher than this range, this 0FFF, in that case we have to use the external memory. External memory has to be interfaced, and the program code will be fetched from the external memory. So next is the internal data memory and SFR, that is the special function register map. These special function registers are mapped in the upper 128 bytes of internal data memory address. So we can see here. So first this 00 to 7F, it is going to be the lower 128 bytes, and 80 to FF, it is going to be the upper 128 bytes. So this SFRs will be mapped in this upper 128 bytes. So there is going to be an address overlap between the upper 128 bytes of RAM memory as well as the SFRs. And this lower 128 memory bytes of RAM will be accessed by means of direct or indirect addressing. And here this SFRs 80 to FF will be accessed only by direct addressing SFRs. So in this part we have discussed about first the basic types of microcontroller, the Harvard von Neumann architecture, RISC and CISC architecture. Then after that we have to see in detail about 8051. So first we saw the features of 8051, then we discussed about the pin diagram, and after that the architecture in detail, then the special function registers associated with the microcontroller, and finally a brief introduction about the memory organization. So in the next video we'll see about the accessing of the external memory location, and after that the addressing modes we'll see in detail. Thank you.